What a crazy press conference. I didn't expect to make a video about it, but man, that press conference was insane. You had Sean Strickland calling out the champ, then going to the most boring reporter questions. How are you gonna win this fight? Then Adesanya trying to ignore it all. He has some good things to say. I did like when he said that it's not him that brought the fight to Australia, it's these guys on this side of the table, it's all of us. We brought this fight to Australia. That was pretty cool to see, giving props to the other fighters. But I also do think he was expecting the crowd maybe not to like him too much because of what he did to Robert Whittaker, and seeing that the audience was cheering for Sean Strickland. Who would have thought that, I guess they relate more to Strickland than they do to Adesanya, considering everything that Strickland was talking about, the whole thing about Chinaman and the whole thing with the dog, and I'll get into that. But mostly, he was trying to ignore it all, which is very strange because the last press conference he was with Sean Strickland in, he said Strickland would be good at promoting the fight and stuff. He'll make the lead up fun, just for him to say very little in the press conference, trying to ignore the promotion that he was talking up about Strickland before. Very strange. Then we went to more reporter questions. How was your fight week? Are you going to win? Literally some of the worst questions I've ever heard from reporters, man. And thankfully, they barely got to talk. Thankfully, it was mostly the fighters doing the talking, most of the fighters taking over the show on stage. And we have to give a lot of credit to that to Sean Strickland and Manel Kape. Manel Kape is the unexpected, unsung hero. I never knew this guy's personality. I never knew what he was all about. You never see his personality on a big stage like that. And for the first time, it looks like when you see the comments, he won a lot of people over. Some would say he could have been a bit too foolish if something popped off on stage, because he ain't handling any of those guys around him. But the level of confidence that guy has, everybody would be grateful to have just a piece of that kind of confidence. To stand up to Adesanya the way he did, being surrounded by all of Izzy's heavyweight friends. If something popped off, that guy is meat. Could you just imagine Adesanya question marking him, Ty kicking on his leg, Tafa jumping on top of him, and then Pedro ripping his arm with an armbar? But he called out Kai Kara-France, who was in the audience, by the way. In the audience, nothing against Kai, but looked like Manel Kape was calling out the hypocrisy in that corner. Adesanya stood up to, try to defend his friend, but he stood up kind of for no reason because he sat down after Manel Kape told him to. So I'm not gonna lie, Manel made me a lot more excited about his fight. Eugene Berriman, who's Kai's and Izzy's coach, went out and criticized Dricus. Even Adesanya did too, actually. Both Izzy and Eugene Berriman criticized Dricus du Plessis for pulling out of this fight because he was injured. And they said that their fighters fight injured. They pull through it. That's what a champion does. That's why they have a championship mentality. But Kai pulled out. And not only he pulled out once, Kai's pulled out so many times in the past 2 years. He's actually pulled out more than he's fought in the octagon. It's nothing against Kai. You tend to see a lot of hypocrisy in that corner. From Izzy talking about the whole thing with Dricus, but he did it to Whittaker. And now Eugene Berriman talking about, oh, Dricus has to fight injured. That's what a champion does. You're going to lose your opportunity, to his own fighter pulling out so many times. And I know people are going to be talking about, oh, a concussion's different than a foot injury. It doesn't matter what the injury is. That's the thing. It doesn't matter what the injury is. You shouldn't be knocking a fighter for an injury, because if they believe they cannot fight with that injury, they probably can't fight with it. Look at TJ trying to prove his toughness to the world, coming into a championship fight pretty much, and now he's retired, probably never going to come back because of that. You should never be knocking a fighter if he has an injury, whether it's a concussion from Kai Kara-France, whether it's a foot injury from Dricus. That's the point of it all. And then we go to more reporter questions. Is this victory going to be good for you? All these reporter questions just seem like they're licking up the fighters, you know what I'm saying? I'm sure Turkali would love that. Nothing it is being too honest, is kind of just catering to the fighters instead of asking real good questions, regardless of what they think the fighters are going to feel about them. They don't have to say anything like disrespectful, of course, but make it interesting, Don't just ask these basic dumb questions all the time just to be on these fighters' good side, right? You could be on their good side by also asking good questions, you know what I'm saying? Talk about techniques and fights, maybe not to Sean Strickland because he doesn't like that kind of thing. Talk about different kind of things that make people a lot more excited. More important questions. Not just, are you going to win this fight? How is fight week? Is the weight cut going to be hard? If you win, would it be really good for you? Should I bet on you?
You tweeted this KO is going to be brutal the other day. So what are you expecting in your fight against Felipe?
And from those questions, we go to Tai Tuivasa just being awesome out there. Regardless of what you think of Tai as like a top contender or whatever, I do see a lot of people knocking him as a contender. As a person, this guy's awesome, right? He's a very exciting fighter to watch, regardless of where he's at in the rankings. And he said that for a long time. He said he doesn't care about necessarily being high in the rankings. He just wants to get paid, put on a show, and just loves to fight. That's all he wants. He's like a new age Mark Hunt with his mentality. And that's why everybody loves this guy. And Volkov just being confused the whole time. He's probably like, wait, why is little man fight Adesanya? Why is Tai say hi to me? Sean makes me uncomfortable. Why does Swedish men want to be tasted? What is going on here? Me no understand. I stay quiet, even though it's crazy because Volkov could knock out like everybody on stage. He could take on anybody on that stage, unless Tuivasa beats him, which would actually be pretty crazy. And yes, he beats Adesanya. Yes, if Volkov fought Adesanya, it'd be way too much. And then we get into the Adesanya stuff that Strickland was talking about. So for people that didn't understand what was going on, Strickland was calling him Chinaman. The reason why he's calling him that is because a long time ago in Adesanya's kickboxing career, there were videos that came out around that time, which was actually not that long ago. You could probably even remember them being on YouTube or on other social media platforms, maybe Reddit, Instagram, you could probably see those. Adesanya would be talking about how he's Chinese on the inside. That's what he was saying. And there's nothing wrong with that, other than the fact that he was trying to bait Dricus into this whole thing. Right? He was calling out Dricus about the whole South Africa thing. But looking at him claiming all these different places while calling out Dricus points to a lot of hypocrisy for a lot of fans. Now, for myself, I don't actually know too much of the history and stuff, so it can be another way. This is just what it seems like to the public, right? This is why Sean Strickland was talking about the whole Chinaman thing. And he said, why you try to bait out Dricus like you did? And honestly, I was like flabbergasted to even ask that. Like, oh, isn't it obvious? No, it's actually not that obvious at all, because he did the same thing to Whitaker. I know he talked that back, but he may have only drew that back because people called him out for it. Because it's clear hypocrisy. It's the exact same thing what he was doing to Dricus, but he did it to Whitaker. And then he talked about the dog thing. And there seems to be a lot of people that don't know what he was saying. Well, there's a video that came out years ago. I saw it maybe a year or two ago on Twitter. You could find some like old posts on Reddit. You could find some old posts on Twitter, and you could see this video. You cannot post it on here, but you can see it on these other platforms. Let's just say he's quote unquote touching his dog inappropriately. And he also fed his dog mouth to mouth. He's made some very weird posts about his dog too. I just saw this the other day. Someone tweeted at me that he said if his dog could speak, he could snitch on so many things about him. Those are all the details I know about. Apparently there's even more, and it's continuing. Like there's more stuff people are bringing up now, and Adesanya is playing into the whole thing. He's playing into the whole Chinaman thing. He brought out his old master or something like that from China, which is actually pretty cool. And he's wearing the whole red shorts thing that he did when he fought back in kickboxing over there. So he's accepting that whole thing. He's not shying away from that. And that's probably the best way for him to play it out. But the mistake he may have made, he's also playing into the whole dog thing. Does he not know how weird that is? I don't think he actually knows how weird it is, because normal people don't touch their dogs like that. And weirdos generally don't know when they're weird. And I'm not talking about quirky weird, like, oh, I watch anime, you know, that kind of weird. I'm talking about like really weird, like strange to the general public. Imagine doing that in public. What would people think of you, right? Would everyone just like walk straight by being, yeah, I do that every Tuesday morning, my dog loves it? No, they would call PETA on you. If that's what this guy is posting publicly, because he posted the video, can you imagine what he does privately? Maybe he doesn't do anything else privately, maybe, but it does leave a lot of people to question, what is this guy doing privately to his dogs? And at the end of the day, people are just looking out for his dogs, right? I'm a dog owner. Ever since I saw that video a year or two ago, I mean, a lot of you guys always ask me, why does it seem like you don't like Adesanya? Now, just to put it out there, I don't hate Adesanya or anything like that. I just think he's very weird. I think he's a very strange person. I don't know Adesanya too well as a person. The only thing I say about his fights is that he's boring, right? But being boring does not mean I hate you or doesn't mean I dislike you or anything like that. No. The only negative thing I talk about Adesanya when it comes to his fighting is sometimes he's boring when he's not fighting stellar competition. But he's still a genius in the octagon. He's still one of the best middleweights of all time. He's an amazing striker, one of the greatest strikers ever in MMA. He's an elite fighter. There's very little bad you could say about Adesanya as a fighter. But the main reason as to why it seems like maybe I don't like him too much as a person is because I saw that dog video. And as a dog owner, it's very weird to see that. I cannot look at him the same way I did when he came into the UFC before I knew about that video, right? Because back in the day, you could look at me talk about Adesanya. There was never any of that feeling, that vibe, like, oh, maybe Weasel doesn't like this guy too much. After I saw that video a year or two ago, that's where my whole perspective about this guy just changed, because I just think he's a weirdo. But hopefully nothing like really bad's happening to his dogs. I hope nothing like that's happening, because, you know, as a dog owner, it's disgusting. You can see a lot of people think the same thing too. Now, I do have to give props to Guru. I mean, number one, he's given me props for so many years. When he does a good job, I'm going to give him props too, even though he did kind of overstretch and exaggerate on that whole Islam versus Volk thing. I think he did a really good job on exposing this whole thing about Adesanya and his dog. I didn't see the video, but I did see some clips on Twitter, so I have to give some props to Guru for that for sure. And hopefully Adesanya's dogs are okay.